for two. Kickers are extra, I give them the boot. Ooh, going for two. Sit back, relax while I grab me a brew. Ooh, now I'm reclining while putting my time and I'm ready to go. My spine is aligning and much my lineups, my bank account grow. I am so rich, but knowledge is all that I'm leaving it with. Ooh, listen to this, multiple options, how far can I get? Ooh, DFS Dynasty redraft tonight, I'm not finishing last. I'm finishing past any and all, I am looking to last. What else? This spot is popping and I am so locked in and only opening the door when it is opportunity knocking. And all of these spots keep on talking and talking. So what are we talking? What kind of alignment? And running it deep, even players forgotten or came from the bottom or hitting that top. And this spot is popping, yeah, this spot is popping. And woo! This is the armchair, yeah. Put up your arms, yeah. Sound the alarm, yeah, yeah, yeah. Woo!
What is going on, guys, and welcome to episode 293 of the Armchair Fantasy Show. I'm your host, of course, Jeff Lambert. You can follow me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. Of course, we are live on the Going for Two Live podcast network every Wednesday and Friday night on Facebook Live, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. Syndicated in all major podcast networks, and, of course, streaming in the app for Going for Two on iOS and Android. All right, I'm here, as always, with my co-host, Mr. Ryan Searfoss. Of course, you can follow him at Foss534. What's up, Ryan?
Not much, man. I didn't know if you froze. My internet was going. You just got so excited because you're about to get that check mark now. Like, I didn't know what was going on. You forgot your Twitter handle because you're so hyped about it. Spending that sweet $8.
Yeah, that $8 a month getting verified. I don't know how I feel about that. I'm not really keen on that. I'm actually hoping that you don't have.
Yeah.
I've been paying for Twitter Blue already, even before they got this whole verified thing now, and now I don't want the verified check anymore.
I'm waiting right till NFL free agency off season. I'm going to pay for that, and I'm spreading fake information to everybody.
Yes,
there's going to be trades, cuts, all kinds of stuff. I don't know. Mahomes might be going to the Giants for all we know. I'm just making shit up.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, joining us for the first time, Mr. Jay Stein, featured writer at Dynasty Nerds. You can follow him at _Jason Stein. What's up, Jay?
Hey, man, how's it going? Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely, man, absolutely. So real quick, give my listeners a quick rundown of what you do in the fantasy space.
Yeah, of course. So, I'm a writer over at Dynasty Nerds. I do a series for them called The Intelligent Fantasy Football Investor. We just had volume 9 published today, actually. And the premise there is it's like a different way to look at value. So I'm taking the relationship between a player's KTC value from Keep Trade Cut versus his fantasy points per game, and kind of looking at players and comparing them relative on that metric. And I also do Devi analytical work for them as well.
Nice.
And then most of that's sort of published written content. And then I actually do a podcast, a patron-only podcast with the Devi Royale guys.
Oh, nice.
That's with Kevin Coleman at DuBois_22. And what we do is you kind of host it, and we go through sort of the analytics of some of these Devi players. And so far we've done Jordan Addison, Zach Charbonnet, Zay Flowers. We did one where we looked at CJ Stroud versus Bryce Young. And then we're going to do another one next week. It's Caleb Williams versus Drake May. So exciting.
Nice.
If you're not a patron, you can go over to the Devi Royale and become a patron. And you get to listen to me every Wednesday and talk about some of the Devi players from an analytical perspective.
I don't know if you do this or not, but the Devi Royale actually started on our network.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They started here Going for Two with Jeff Bell and all them. And they were doing the show on here for a while and then decided to go independent, and they just they've blown up since then, so it's good to see them still doing good.
Yep.
All right, let's go ahead and jump right into it. Let's get to our bleep use.
Hey, you know what? F you.
All right, Jay, you're the guest here, so we'll get you the first pick here. What is your bleep you this week?
Yeah, so I'm gonna give a bleep you to Matt Nagy. And the reason here is, Matt Nagy almost ruined Justin Fields' career. And I guess maybe that's kind of like a bold statement. And look, Trubisky didn't work out. Okay, fine, move on. You traded up to get Justin Fields. Then you did some sort of like weird QB battle with Andy Dalton to start off Fields' career. Then he becomes the starter, but he doesn't adapt the offense to what Justin Fields can do, what he was good at. Look, I'm a Columbus guy. I'm a 2-time Ohio State grad. I followed Fields' career from when he was, a high school student all the way up to, his present time here. I'm vested. I'm a Justin Fields truther. He's my most rostered player in fantasy. My intelligent fantasy football investor work, I've had a buy on him formally since July, but I've been playing in a lot of Devy leagues. And so, Fields didn't start this year off very hot, to the point where if you add up what happened with Matt Nagy and then the beginning of this year, people were getting to the point where, like, is this guy a franchise QB or is his confidence shattered and we need to move on and pick somebody else early in the next year's draft. But the last 4 to 5 weeks, it looks like Luke Getzey, as the offensive coordinator there, has sort of developed a game plan that sort of fits a lot more along with what Justin Fields can do. And we're now seeing what is, living up to his full potential, what he can actually do on the field. Run substantially to the point where he becomes a fantasy differentiator at the QB position. And so I think now what we've learned is that the Bears have their franchise QB, and now they can build around him, and they don't have to worry about what that is next year. But the big bleep you is to Matt Nagy for almost ruining
it.
what Justin Fields' career could have been. But it looks like we're getting on a better track now here.
Yeah. I actually try to trade him today in one of my leagues because I have Jalen Hurts as my starter, and the guys still aren't buying it. They're like, oh, I don't know if I trust it. And I'm like, dude, from week 5 on, he is the QB1. Like, at least in our scoring, maybe different in some other scoring, but he is the QB1 from QB5 on. That's a pretty good sample size, and he's putting up monster numbers. So yeah, I'm with you there. I love Justin Fields, and I'm glad that he finally had his time to shine. Ryan, what you got for your bleep you?
Maybe kind of want to go bigger, but it's Michael Pittman right now. We got 3 weeks in a row where he is just not performed, and this week was 22 yards was just the down of it. And when I say I want to go bigger, it goes strictly to the Colts and that entire just mess of an organization, putting in Jeff Saturday as a head coach. We all got Malik Willis. I was the most in on Pittman before the season, and now with just this debacle of everything, I'm out, at least for this year, until things get settled. And it breaks my heart because one of my most rostered players, and he's so talented. It's just
they're ruining him. Yep.
Yeah, Jim Irsay and his drunk ass can kick rocks. Like, it's more his fault. So maybe as misguided Michael Pittman, it's more Irsay and that whole organization. But man, it hurts. I love Pittman.
Yeah, that's definitely on my list as well because I have a lot of Pittman as well, especially in my home league too, and he's killing me right now with those last couple of weeks. Especially after he started, we thought, okay, he's like going to be, borderline wide receiver 1 territory from the rest of the season, and then all of a sudden it just, quarterback change and, everything else, and it's fallen apart since then.
And I mean, it's like not even really him. He's getting targets. It's just that offense and that quarterback situation is bad. Matt Ryan looked just washed. And now, Ellinger, Jesus. I was going straight to that, but Ellinger looks rough too.
Yeah,
like,
they both look pretty bad.
It's shoddy, man. Like, I'm out. I can't trust that quarterback situation for him.
Definitely not. So my bleep you, I think, has made an appearance on the podcast already once, but it's an extra bleep you because he kind of teased us a little bit in the last couple of weeks, and it's Mr. Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts, I've got in multiple leagues. I actually played him over some tight ends like Greg Dulcich and Cade Otton and guys like that over the last couple of weeks. And every time I go to trust him, I'm like, okay, finally, I can trust him. And then he goes and he screws me again because I have Cade Otton sitting on my bench this week with 17 points. And I think Pitts got me a whopping 4 points in my start position. So, yeah, bleep you to Kyle Pitts. I know it's not all his fault, kind of like similar to Michael Pittman. It's not all his fault. That offense is just run heavy. They run, and they run some more. And Mariota's going to run the ball as well, not throw it too much. So, it's not all his fault. But, yeah, he definitely has screwed me overall in most of my leagues.
These terrible organizations, like, if you're that bad, they should be forced to make changes after multiple years in a row.
Yeah, there you go. Yep. Time to find new owners, right? Like we do in dynasty leagues. Yeah, you suck, dude. Get out of my league.
Yeah. There's times I wish the NFL would do that.
All right, let's get into some news and notes.
News and notes from around the league.
All right, as always, news and notes brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. A single game and single week best ball leagues are here. If you love fantasy football, nothing better than weekly best ball leagues like Underdog offers. No need to wait to the end of the season to find out if you won. You can find out if you win every single week. Get the Underdog app for iOS or Android and use our promo code GF2 to get 100% deposit match up to $100. Underdog is one of the fastest growing fantasy sport platforms out on the market. And there's a reason for that. So see what all the hype is about. Get the app, use our promo code GF2, and start winning. All right, not a ton of notes this week to really look at that's, from a fancy standpoint, but we're going to look at a couple of these ones here. And I'll go to you first on this one, Jay, with Odell Beckham, being linked now to the Cowboys. Jerry Jones came out and said he would look pretty good in the Dallas uniform. A couple questions here. One, do you believe that'll actually happen? And two, if it does happen, is he relevant at all in fantasy, you think?
Oh man, I don't know if it happens. My first comment here is is Odell Beckham Jr. shopping for his place to go to the next Super Bowl? Like last year he picked the Rams because they were going to Super Bowl. He ended up being injured, but he played really well and that was part of the reason why they got there. Or is he looking for maybe like a better fit from an organizational perspective? I mean, the Cowboys have CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup, but the next level of the receivers is Noah Brown and Jalen Tolbert. Sufficient, but I don't know if they're I guess maybe fairly replaceable. Odell Beckham Jr. is a next level talent. If he's on the team, he'll probably be performing pretty well. So if he does sign and become a player there, I'm not sure how much he helps you from a fantasy perspective. My guess is he's probably coming back to play for this team because he thinks that they'll do well. And the Cowboys maybe wouldn't be at the top of my Super Bowl contenders list, but they're definitely not the bottom.
Right.
I think they have a decent shot. So I think it's just interesting. Is Odell Beckham Jr. the guy that can pick Super Bowl teams or I don't know, but yeah. So interesting landing spot. I think there's space for him to do well if he gets put on the team. I'm not sure how fantasy relevant he'll be, but he's from a fantasy perspective, since he came in the league, he's done really well. And even last year, there were some games where you could start him and he did pretty well for you. So,
yeah, absolutely.
I guess that's kind of how I feel about it.
What about you, Ryan? Any interest in Odell Beckham as a Cowboy?
Not really that much. I mean, I like it from a real football perspective and making the team better, like you said, and the NFC the way it is, they're a contender and adding that is huge for that offense, especially with that in division and probably facing Philly at some point in the playoffs if they make it that far where they're going to be in a shootout the way that offense is going. So you need all the firepower you can get. But if anything, I think it's a detriment to the other receivers in fantasy more than a help for him. Like, I think it might not take a lot of targets away, but it's going to take away some targets from Gallup. Might take away 1 or 2 targets a game from him. Might take away a target or 2 from CeeDee Lamb. Might take away from it's just going to it's going to be a nag to everybody and kind of hurt the consistency of the players around them. So from a fantasy perspective, I don't like it for that reason. But real football makes sense to me.
Yeah, I'm with y'all as well. I think it's kind of how it's like. He's almost like that running back that steals away your touchdowns. He's going to go in there and just hurt the value of the guys that you already have on your team starting.
Not a lot, but just like enough to be really annoying.
Yep.
Especially late in the year when he's fresh and you're in fantasy playoffs.
Agreed.
Yeah, I don't know how deep your leagues are, but if you're in that league where you're starting Noah Brown or trying to hope for Jalen Tolbert, that pretty much it nixes those guys.
Yeah, those guys are done. Yeah. Exactly. They have zero value at that point.
I mean, that's a deep league right there.
Yeah. All right, Ryan, let's look at the running back here. Let's go look at Mr. Rachaad White. I'm pretty sure I think you were a big fan of Rachaad White, but he's been getting a little bit more usage. He's getting more snap percentage. And now the Athletics, Greg Auman writes that the momentum will be with Rachaad White towards the end of the season. Fournette seems to be a little bit getting phased out. What are your thoughts here with Rachaad White?
I love Rachaad White. I'm going to start saying that. I love the skill set. I was very high on him in the draft. I think this is kind of just like talk though. That offense, we've seen it work the best when it's run play action and they're running the ball. Leonard Fournette even said, "You need me to run," after the game, complaining about touches and needing the ball. Then this team is as bad as they are in first place in their division. And winter months get colder, that big back, and later in the year, and teams are beat up. That big back is who teams go to, not the scat back and the receiving back as much. I think we might see a little more usage, but I still think it's going to be Leonard Fournette's show at least through this season.
Yeah. I think your AC may have kicked on, Ryan. I can hear that wind blowing.
It did. It did. Yeah,
Happens at least once a podcast.
It hasn't happened lately.
Yeah, you're right. It hasn't happened in a while.
I was forced
Jay,
to put the heat on.
Get your thoughts on Rachaad White here, Jay. First of all, are you a fan of Rachaad White coming into
Yeah,
this year?
I think I'd echo those sentiments. I'm a fan of Rachaad White coming out. The point is, I'd say is, from a dynasty perspective, from a long-term perspective, I'd kind of expect this to happen. Fournette was never really that great of a running back. He scored a lot of fantasy points, right? So there's been times when you wanted to own him, where he's been a value. But from a dynasty perspective, over the long term, I'd expect more work to go to Rachaad White. I think the thing about Tampa is, and this might be the overarching thing, is in the long term, is what happens with Tom Brady. So, does he come back next year? Does he retire? Does he find another team? I think that all, stems with what's going to happen with Tampa. So, there might be a mass exodus if Tom Brady leaves, and they might do a rebuild. In that case, obviously Rachaad White's going to be the running back that you want to own for the long term there.
Yeah.
So, I think in the near term, it's interesting to see Rachaad taking some of the carries. I think Leonard Fournette, like Ryan said, is probably the one you want to own through the rest of this season. But in the long term, Rachaad White is probably the one you want to own. Yeah,
I'm with y'all too. I like Rachaad White a lot, and the thing with Rachaad White is I do think that, like you mentioned earlier, like the Leonard Fournette, he was catching passes, but he's not really known as a pass catching back. I know he had a couple of years where he had a ton of catches. I think it was more about he was the only one there. Where Rachaad White actually has those pass catching chops. He can run, real routes out of the backfield. So I do see them using him a little bit more out of the backfield towards the end of the season. Will it be enough to be fancy relevant? Probably not. But like you said, long term, I do think he's the man there. So I'm with you on Rachaad White.
The mass exodus point was very good, by the way. Like, if Brady leaves, all those vets leave.
Yep.
And that opens the door up from a dynasty perspective.
Yep. Let's stick with the running backs, Ryan, and I'll go to you because you're in Pittsburgh. Jaylen Warren also kind of expected to get more touches, as the season progresses here. One, does it even matter? Because, Najee Harris can't seem to be behind that offensive line. And two, do you actually buy that he's going to be getting more work?
No, and not really. I think he might get a few more carries a game here and there because, in all reality, Najee Harris, they're running this dude into the ground. It's such an inefficient rate. It's such volume. Like, he's getting hit behind the line of scrimmage or at the line of scrimmage from multiple angles every game. It's not like he's getting hit downfield and maybe taking some less rates. My man is just trying to play power football and getting dinged up. And while Warren did look really good last week on his few carries he had, it's because they weren't stacking the box because it's Jaylen Warren in there. If he starts getting a workload like Najee, I don't see the outcome being that much different. And the way the Steelers' offensive line and that offense looks in general, I don't really want a running back there anyways. Especially if it's not the one who we presume is more talented, even though Najee looks like he's super hesitant running the ball. Like, he kind of looks like he's not ready, and maybe they're just saying that to put a fire under him. But it's hard, man. Like, I don't want any pieces of Jaylen Warren, and if this is a split backfield, I don't want either.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. And I saw a lot of stuff about his, quote-unquote efficiency numbers being better than Najee Harris. But like you mentioned, he's in there on the passing downs. He's in there when they're not expecting to run. And then they run the ball, and, of course, they're caught off guard or, there's not a stacked box. So he has higher efficiency numbers because of that. But you put him in there first or second down, I think it's the same thing Najee Harris is going to run into. I forget what the stat is called, but it's the stat that, first contact, before they reach first contact, Najee Harris is like 0.1. Like, literally, he's getting touched before he gets across the line of scrimmage. It's insane.
Yeah, like he's averaging 6.5 defenders in the box. Like he's not getting. He's a stacked front 13% of the time. Like with 8 or more in the box. Like he's really in there all the time. He's 24th in that. It's not good at all. They
Good.
don't respect the offense, and they're just pounding him in that.
Yep. What about your thoughts, Jay? Any thoughts here on Warren that we didn't already mention?
Yeah, I think the main issue here is the Steelers' offensive line is not that good. I think
That's being
PFF
nice.
has them has them at the number 22 in run blocking grades, and like it's like systemic, right? So they talk about building football teams from the line or the inside out. You got to have a good offensive line to manage a game, and if you're having issues there, if you don't have the talent to keep up, the quarterback's going to suffer, the running back's going to suffer, the passing game's going to suffer. And you're just not going to see fantasy production. So, like honestly, to me, it doesn't matter who's back there. I think we've said that before. If the offensive line isn't blocking very well, there's not going to be very much fantasy production out of either of them. So,
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, we got two left here. We'll go real quick. I'll just ask one of them to each of you, and I'll go with Elijah Moore for you, Jay.
Yeah.
Elijah Moore obviously has some issues, wanted to trade, didn't play last week. Salah is saying the team is going to move him to the slot. Do you see any relevance here for Elijah Moore going forward? Do you think he gets any usage in the slot?
Goodness gracious, I hope so. Elijah Moore is so good. They currently have Braxton Berrios as the starter in the slot. I think Elijah Moore is head and shoulders above Braxton Berrios. Yeah, I mean, honestly, just get him on the field and start getting him targets. He's too good to not be getting targets. So, does it happen? I don't know what the probabilities are, but I think he's good enough that if he's getting out there and he gets some targets, you're going to start seeing some fantasy relevant weeks. So I want him on my team if I have him.
If you're in a redraft right now and he's sitting on your waiver wire, are you picking him up?
Yeah, I guess it depends on sort of the construction of my team. Do I have the ability or a roster or bench spot to take an upside shot on a player? A lot of times in the redraft, you're holding the backup running backs on teams in case somebody gets injured. Or there's usually plenty of wide receivers to go around, so you could probably leave them on your waiver wire for a little bit until you start to see the production, and then maybe be early to grab them at some point. But not like blowing all the fab to get a guy like Elijah Moore yet, because he's really not producing yet. And if he does get on the field, if we start to see all those metrics come up where he starts getting targets, and even if it's not really converting yet, then that gets to be a point where you want him on your squad. But in dynasty, from a dynasty perspective, I want to keep him. I want to hold him. In some cases, if people are just kind of fed up, I'll buy him for pretty cheap. So
yeah, I'm with you. All right, Ryan, I'm gonna go to you for this coaching change here. Jeff Saturday, we mentioned already, he's now the new Colts head coach. Does this change his philosophy at all? I mean, he's a former, center offensive lineman. Does he go to Jonathan Taylor and just run him to death? Or, what do you think the offense looks like?
I have no idea, man. I want to say I have an idea on this, and I probably could, but let's be real. No one knows what he's going to do, and this man's never coached before. Yes, they considered him the second smartest man on the Colts on that Peyton Manning run, and he knows the organization inside out, but the NFL's changed since then. It's a whole different role other than just worry about the offensive line, which is completely underperformed, and he has terrible quarterback situation. I think it's just a reason to get people excited, maybe show up at the stadium and show former players some respect. I think it's a nightmare.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. We have no idea what's going to go on there with that offense. I mean, have they officially named the starting quarterback yet? I know there's, rumor that he might change the starting quarterback, but, does he go back to Matt Ryan? Is he even healthy? They have Nick Foles there too, right? Do they go to Nick Foles? I mean, Nick Foles is, I think, on the roster, I believe. So
I mean, Foles can't be worse than Ellinger.
Yeah, 100%.
And hell, he might not be worse than Ryan. He looked so bad this year.
Yeah, he can definitely maybe get Pittman some value there. Just target the hell out of him a little bit. Do something.
Oh, if Nick Foles takes over, I'm back on Pittman train because he loves those big body wide receivers.
Yeah, Gator saying in the chat that should they shut JT down? But I did hear today that JT was practicing today. So
I have 0 Jonathan Taylor shares in fantasy, so I hope so. So it helps me do a championship. If you guys have him, sorry, but that doesn't help me.
I got
but
a few shares of Jonathan Taylor.
No, I don't think they should do that.
Yeah, I don't know if they should shut him down either. I do think that he needs to somehow get his head into the game, and they need to go back to what they were doing last year. I mean, if you look at his averages, he's still averaging a pretty decent yards per carry. They just stopped running the ball. I don't know what the heck the problem is. All right, let's go ahead.
Football teams do bad things.
Yeah, they definitely do.
It's game script. Sorry.
Yeah, it is game script. You're right. I mean, if you're behind, you can't really keep running the ball unless you're the Tennessee. They seem to do that no matter what's going on. Run the ball some more. What are your thoughts, real quick, on this offense? I'm curious to your thoughts on what happens going forward.
Yeah, it's an interesting dilemma they're in there. My team's the Colts. I follow them a little bit more than some of the other teams. They have a really good offensive line, and they've really gotten away from the run game. So I'm not sure what's going on there.
I'm sorry for trashing your team.
Yeah, it's all right.
I'm so sorry.
I was listening to Move the Sticks today with Dan Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks. They were kind of talking a little bit about Jeff Saturday, and there's Reggie Wayne is the wide receivers coach, and they were kind of implying like, all right, Jim Isray is just going back to a time when the Colts were winning, and he's just hiring guys that kind of like we're from that era, and the next step is to get Peyton Manning there to be the QB coach and call the plays or something like that. So I don't
Marvin
know.
Harrison is buying
kind of
QBs these days, so maybe he needs a job.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's go ahead and get to Factor Cap.
And now it's Fact or Cap.
All right, so for the old guys out there like myself, obviously Cap means false. It's a TikTok thing, and Ryan makes fun of me every time I have this segment.
You just sounded older describing it.
Yeah.
Like you just aged yourself an extra 5 years.
All right, Jay, this first one's for you here. Jamar Chase will not play another game in the fantasy regular season, which is 4 games, I believe. So do you think he's out until the playoffs, or is he out even further than that maybe?
Yeah, so hip injury, the original prognosis was 4 to 6 weeks. That was 2 weeks ago. So now he's 2 to 4 weeks from that original timeline. He didn't go on IR, so that's an optimistic sign that they're going to try and get him back. So that means there's at least 2 more weeks. So we know that. There's no reason to hurry back if the Bengals keep winning. So that's, I guess, part of the discussion. But I think it puts him back at week 12 at the earliest, 12 or 13. So depending on where your fantasy playoffs are, I think he probably gets back around week 12. So I'd say that's a cap.
Yes.
Because I think that he gets back week 12 or week 13.
Yeah, and you get a chance to see him for the playoffs because my fear is as a Jamar Chase owner that you get him back for round 1 of the playoffs, and then your dilemma is, do you start him or not? Like you never really know how they're going to use him first game back. So hopefully he comes back week 12. You can see him a couple of games first before you can put him into your lineup. All right, Ryan, talking about some terrible quarterbacks here. Aaron Rodgers has not looked very good. So my question to you here, Factor Cap, Jordan Love will get a start or 2 before the end of the season.
Unless there's an injury to Aaron Rodgers, I think that makes this an unfair question. Unless there's an injury, I say it's Cap. The reason is, Fuller is on the hot seat. And if you're on the hot seat and you pull a Hall of Fame quarterback and that move doesn't work, you're 1,000% gone. There's 0 chance he keeps his job if they pull Rodgers and Love just does not do well, which in the situation with what this team's doing and the weapons, he's not the best part to succeed. the best place to succeed. I think it'd be kind of ending that career there, which could be over anyways, but getting Rodgers out of the game, I think that ends it for sure if it fails.
Who was it a couple years ago that got benched? I want to say it might have been Matthew Stafford. I can't remember. Someone had like a consecutive game streak, and they benched him for somebody for one game, and then he ended up coming back the next week. And I can't remember who it was, but it failed miserably. I thought it was Stafford, but maybe it wasn't. I got to go back and look at it. But yeah, definitely, I agree with you. I think it'd be a bad look overall, because then you're going to piss off Aaron Rodgers on top of that, and then you got the whole nightmare.
It's a huge distraction from the media.
Yeah, definitely. They can almost like maybe hope that Aaron Rodgers tweaks a hammy so they can at least get Jordan Love out there just for one game, just to see if they have anything there at all going forward.
The best chance would be him getting hurt or him just getting fed up and pulling himself.
Yeah.
Then LaFleur doing it.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? What's going to happen next year?
Yeah.
I don't know. Are they going to try and the contract is crazy, so I don't know if they'll even be able to move on from him if they wanted to.
Yeah, it'll be hard, especially unless he starts playing a little bit better. I mean, he looked terrible this past week. I think he threw 3 picks in the end zone, which is not Aaron Rodgers like at all.
He's like one of only 5 quarterbacks to ever do that, or like in recent time to do it, and all of them were like huge NFL busts who we all know is huge busts.
Yeah,
I saw the side that made me laugh, but yeah, dude, it's bad, and he is how much dead cap next year?
It's got to be like 35 million, 25 million, something like that.
Yeah, I'll find out. Oh my god. Actually, you know what? It's it's 99 million. It's shit. $99 million dead cap hit next year. 24 the year after that, which is still kind of huge, but better than paying him 40.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. He's there for next year for sure.
I think he's there through 2024.
Yeah.
2025, cutting him at 16 million is doable, but 99 million dead cap?
That's insane. That is insane.
You're not benching him either because of that.
Agreed. All right, Jay, let's go to you. This one is a backfield that's been frustrating if you own the higher priced guy here for sure. But my question to you is, Jamal Williams scores more fantasy points than DeAndre Swift from now on, from week 10 on. So everything's back to zero now. Swift is, he's supposedly healthy. What are your thoughts here? Fact or cap? Jamal Williams scores more.
Cap. If Swift is healthy, which he's got the designation that he's healthy, I think he's going to score more fantasy points per game. So, and I can't really guess if Swift gets injured or not. Again, I mean, he's had some injuries that happens, but Swift has the tools to be an elite fantasy running back. He's had the ability to consistently over a year put up those elite fantasy points per game. So I got to go with Swift over Williams for the rest of the season.
All right. It only makes me nervous there is like even when Swift was healthy earlier in the season, they were pulling Swift out to put Jamal Williams in to get the touchdowns, and that takes away a lot of his value.
But we knew that coming in. Like, that's not what his game is. Pass catching and
we did, but I mean, to that extent, I mean, he literally was in none of the packages after the 10-yard line. It was all Jamal Williams. Like, they literally pulled Swift out and he barely got in there. So that it's one thing to say that you're going to use a guy, in occasional packages, but when you're literally taking your main guy out literally every time down the red zone, that's a little concerning for me. Because unless he scores from 30 yards out, he's not scoring. But I think I'm with you, though, Jay. I do think it's cap. I do think Swift does outscore Jamal Williams the rest of the season. I think Jamal Williams has been on a little bit of a high. I do think he kind of comes back to earth a little bit. And I think Swift, as long as he can stay healthy, will pick up the slack. All right, Ryan, this one's for you. Factor cap. Tua Tagovailoa is a top 5 QB rest of season. And that's for fantasy purposes, obviously, not top 5 in the NFL.
I really wanted to say fact. I really did, because I love those weapons there. I like the way their offense looks. I mean, Hill and Waddle are just electric for them. But after the next 2 weeks, Cleveland, Houston, that schedule to end the season gets really rough. I mean, we got San Fran, the Chargers. Then you got Buffalo, Green Bay, New England. Like, that's tough, man. Those are all a lot of good defenses, and he's really going to struggle. And top 5 in the NFL right now is hard to get because you have just monsters ahead of him. Like with Allen, Mahomes, Hurts, Burrow, Lamar, Kyler Murray still, even though Call of Duty's still out there, he's still a fantasy beast. Justin Fields is on fire right now. Yeah. Like there's so many good quarterbacks. Cracking that top 5 with that schedule is going to be really freaking hard.
Yeah, I think too what goes against him is he's not a running quarterback. I know he can scramble a little bit, but he's not Justin Fields, he's not Lamar Jackson, he's not Josh Allen. Those guys I think get that, that immediate floor of the rushing ability right there, where Tua would have to basically throw 5 touchdowns every game to keep up with that rushing ability. So I'm with you. I think he's top 10 easy. Obviously, I think.
Yeah, I think he just lives in that 7 to 10 range for the foreseeable future with those receivers the way they are. I mean, he might have a couple years where he's ahead of that, but that's fine.
That's fine. I'm with you. Another running back situation here, and this is more about the just kind of comparing two guys that were valued quite differently in the offseason here. Donta Foreman scores more fantasy points than Najee Harris rest of season. Fact or cap?
Gosh, this is such a sad question, honestly. Like we've come to the point where we're trying to decide if Foreman, the journeyman running back, who is there because basically a replacement level running back, scores more than the first round Najee Harris pick for the Steelers. I don't know. It just hurts to hear the question. Honestly, I've never been a huge Najee fan, and you get into that whole efficiency versus volume type stuff, and I agree with that side. But there comes a point where you just kind of have to trust the Najee will get the volume and actually start putting up points per game at a decent level. Now, Donta Foreman's had 2 good games, right? Last week was not as great. He played the Bengals, and I think he only had 30-some yards rushing. So, 2 games doesn't make a trend, but it's something to think about. And clearly he's usable. It depends. He's sharing the backfield with Chuba Hubbard. So it depends on I guess the game plan and how much Chuba gets used as well. But I think I'm going to go with Cap here and give the nod to Najee Harris. And it's just a guess, but I think Najee probably ends up with more points for the rest of the season than Foreman.
Yeah, it's funny because this question came about because I was looking at rest of season rankings on Fantasy Pros, and Donta Foreman is 1 spot ahead of Najee Harris in the rest of season rankings, and I was like, that's really interesting. So let me put that into a factor cap because obviously somebody's valuing Donta Foreman a little bit more than Najee if that's how it's going to fall. And you're right. Like he had a bad game last week. Now, granted, they played the Bengals, and the Bengals were up 35-0 in the first quarter. It felt like. So he got game scripted out. So who knows going forward? But yeah, that team in general is going to have negative game scripts for the rest of the season. So it'll be tough for him to keep up that pace. So I think I'm with you. I think Najee Harris. I don't want either one of them really. I think both are very inefficient, and you're going to be frustrated as hell. But if I had to pick one, I'd take Najee Harris. All right, Ryan. Last one here. Fact or cap? Greg Dulcich outscores Kyle Pitts rest of the season. He's played 3 games and he's had 3 tight end 1 games. Dulcich has. Kyle Pitts has 2 tight end 1 games and he's played every game this season. So,
speaking about sad questions,
yeah,
this is so bad. I honestly would probably lean Dulcich, just because, man, Atlanta's a mess. As bad as I talked about another team earlier, this team's worse. Atlanta is an absolute nightmare. They refuse to use 2 of their only 3 talented players. They don't know what the hell they're doing there. And
but they're winning. They're the first in the division right now.
I just don't understand because they're running the ball, but they're ignoring the Pitts in London, and I have no faith in it.
It's crazy
And
to think that the Falcons are one of the most efficient red zone teams as far as scoring touchdowns right now, and they're not even using Drake London or Pitts down in that range. It's just the running back.
which they're just built for that.
Yep.
And it's crazy to me that they're doing that. And like I said, NFC's so bad right now that they've somehow made the 4 wins.
Yeah.
But dude, I just don't have faith. And you know what? Russell Wilson, he's starting to get that little attachment to Goldschitz. And he hasn't really shown it with anybody else yet. So I'm going to lean with that.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, let's get to our play pickup prop bets.
Going for 2 Live and PlayPickup.com present the pickup props of the week.
All right, guys. By now, you should know how this works. On our Discord, Play Pickup provides us with some prop bets, mostly head-to-head type matchups, stuff like that, over-unders and things that we put in the chat. You can go in there and vote, and as long as you're a registered Play Pickup, you can go to PlayPickup.com, get registered. You earn points, and those points can then be traded in to win prizes and such. So go ahead and get to the 3 this week. First one here for you, Jay. More receiving yards in Week 10, Justin Jefferson or Stephon Diggs?
Gosh, this is an interesting one, right? So on PFF, Justin Jefferson's projected yards is 87 and Diggs is 80, so pretty close. If you look on their wide receiver cornerback matchup advantages, both of them have pretty good matchups. Justin Jefferson's numbers are a 70 and Diggs is an 84, so Diggs has a little bit better matchup going against the Vikings quarterbacks than Justin Jefferson does. The real question here is Josh Allen. He showed up on the injury report. I think he's got an elbow issue. So is he playing or is he not playing? That could have a interesting effect on the game. But this is just Stephon Diggs going against his old team as well. So some things to think. So I think it's Case Keenum is the backup too, and I think he was a Viking as well. So it could be a little bit of that revenge type stuff. But I got to go with Justin Jefferson. Just the numbers, and if Josh Allen doesn't play, which he might not, right now I got to pick Justin Jefferson.
All right, which way are you going, Ryan?
That narrative thing with just how vindictive Stephon Diggs is almost made me completely change my answer. But I mean, we're talking since week 4, Justin Jefferson's lowest total in a week's been 98 yards. He's just an absolute just machine this season. Oh, he's been a machine his whole career, but he's just unstoppable. And I love Stephon Diggs. He's one of my favorite receivers in the league, but Jefferson is just a beast. I'm not taking anybody over him in any game for yardage.
Well, what's crazy is, wasn't Case Keenum his quarterback the miracle game versus the Saints? Wasn't that season? Stephon Diggs in the playoffs? Wasn't Case Keenum the quarterback? Yeah, I think it was. I could be wrong, but I thought Case Keenum was the quarterback that year, that they had that one miracle run, and then Case Keenum went on to be a quarterback elsewhere after that, and they brought in Kirk Cousins. But I think it was. Yeah, so that narrative thing, honestly, when I brought this up, I wasn't even thinking about the narrative. You're right, though. That definitely adds a little bit of a twist there. But Jefferson's just been so good this year. I know he had this couple of games early in the season where he wasn't doing good, but since then they've targeted the hell out of him. Even if Josh Allen plays, he's got more weapons, I think, than the Vikings do overall. So I think that Jefferson gets this mark here. All right, Ryan, this one's pretty interesting here. This one is more rushing yards in Week 10, and rushing yards is the key there. It's not total yards. Saquon Barkley or Dameon Pierce? Who gets more rushing yards Week 10?
I'm taking Saquon pretty easily. Houston is giving up the most rushing yards per game. The Giants, while they're not giving up as much, they're still a pretty solid defense and pretty good at focusing on one guy in an offense. And I don't see any way that Pierce is going to have more of that. Everybody's running on them. They're giving up 100. I didn't even believe it. They're giving up 180 rushing yards a game.
Wow.
That's... I read it 4 times before I said it because I thought it was wrong. But they're giving up 180 rushing yards a game. Dude, I can't bet it. I can't bet for that.
Yeah. That's crazy. And I just did Google it while you were talking. It was Case Keenum to Stephon Diggs in the Minnesota Miracle. All right, Jay, what are your thoughts here? More rushing yards, Saquon Barkley, Dameon Pierce.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Barkley for the same reasons. The PFF grades the O line versus D line matchups each week, and it's pretty favorable for Barkley and slightly unfavorable for Pierce. So they're pretty close in terms of a projected yardage. So like I understand why this is like a prop bet, but I got to give it to Barkley just because of the situational advantage here.
Yeah, I'm with you as well. I think Barkley's going to be a popular play in DFS this week as well because of that reason. Houston's defense is just that bad against the run. All right, last one here, Jay. Over under 249.5 passing yards for Jalen Hurts in Week 10 versus the Commanders. So what are your thoughts here? Over under 250 basically is what it is.
Yeah, so the projection for PFS have him at 244.5, so it's like right again, really close. He went for over 250 in 3 out of his 8 games so far. So interestingly, his highest passing yards game season was 340 yards against the Commanders in Week 3. So like there's precedent here. Like he could hit the over, and if he's done it before, and this is his highest passing yards game. So, but actually, given all that, I'm still gonna take the under. But that's sort of a low confidence guess.
Yeah, it's a tough mark because I think if I'm not mistaken, this is the Monday night game too, isn't it? I believe it's
I can't remember.
Night. Yeah, it's the Monday night game, and I'm sure we'll see highlights from the Monday Night Massacre when Vic was the quarterback for the Eagles and they massacred the then Redskins. I'm sure we'll still see that at some point on the telecast. They'll bring it up because Jalen Hurts is similar to Michael Vick in that sense. What are your thoughts, Ryan? Over under 249.5 passing yards for Hurts this week.
I'm going under too. Mainly what you said, and then there's the fact division games very rarely end up the same. Especially with that little extra prep. They're getting a little healthier and running the ball more. I just think it's changed a lot. And I think that early in the season, Philly took caught a lot of teams off guard with the way that passing offense opened everything up. I just don't think it'll be the same team you're seeing in Washington or the same game plan.
Yeah, that's a good call because you're right. I mean, everyone didn't expect Jalen Hurts to come out and all of a sudden be like this proficient passer. They, probably were game planning to stop the run. And he comes out and just lights them up in the passing game. So, yeah, that's a good call that they probably game plan a little bit differently this week. All right, guys, we're going to do something. This is a new segment for us. I actually stole it from Brian. I don't know if he's in the chat or not, but he did it on his show a few weeks ago. And I was like, oh, yeah, I kind of like that. So we're going to steal it. I don't have a drop for it, but we're calling it I Was Wrong. Basically, give us a couple guys that you were either buying in the offseason or you were drafting in the offseason or just players you thought in general would break out. This would be their year. Maybe you wrote them up in an article, whatever. But turns out you were definitely wrong. So we'll go to you first, Jay. You're the guest here, so you get to go first. Give us your first player that you were wrong about.
Yeah, so I actually track this stuff pretty good. In my intelligent fantasy football investor work, I'm like giving buy and sell recommendations. I'm giving you actually a price target in terms of KTC, and I'm keeping track of the hits and misses. And so, I have a pretty extensive list of, all of the trades I've closes, how well I've done, which has actually been pretty good. But I'll give you my misses on the buy side. So I missed on Tom Brady, James Conner, Deontay Johnson, Brandon Cooks, Noah Fant, and Hunter Henry. And on the sell side, I missed on Nick Chubb and Dameon Pierce. These are all guys that I've actively told people to buy or sell. So I was given the recommendation here. On the buy side, you can see like Tom Brady, James Conner, Deontay Johnson, Brandon Cooks, Hunter Henry. These are all guys that scored fantasy points, a lot of fantasy points, and this year decided that they weren't going to score any fantasy points. Yeah. So, that's the list. Now, I hit on a lot of guys too as well, but this is my list of, they're kind of little. None of these guys are rookies. They're kind of a little older, and I was counting on that fantasy production. I still think these are all buys. Even if if you're thinking about Tom Brady from a 1 year perspective, or James Conner from a 1 year perspective, or if you're thinking about Deontay Johnson from a dynasty perspective, or no fan, I think these guys are all buys. They're all too cheap. But what I really like to do is see some of these guys start scoring a lot of points. We saw Noah Fant actually have a decent game last week. And then the sells, that's Nick Chubb and Damian Pierce. Nick Chubb, he always kind of like gets on my sells list because of sort of the situation that he's in.
Yeah.
Nobody would argue that he's not one of the best running backs in the NFL, but he's complemented by a pretty good running back in Kareem Hunt. And until that situation changes, he's probably part of a committee where his upside's a bit capped. And this year he went off, right? So he's scoring a lot more touchdowns than he typically does. And so, I just kind of like got bit there. And then Damian Pierce, usually I'm not very high on running backs that don't get drafted early because my thought process is usually they're replaceable. You think about some of the guys that have come in that didn't have very good draft capital, like James Robinson, some of the other guys, where like the next year they draft a first round running back and everything's sort of capped. That doesn't mean that Damian Pierce this year can't be really good and score a lot of points, but I think where I missed that was that I was kind of writing him off, the early production off for the longer term view that eventually he gets replaced and some of that value falls off.
Yeah, the Nick Chubb one, definitely I feel your pain there because I actually sold him in my home league. I drafted him in my rookie draft, when he first came out, and I've had him on my team ever since. And I'm always a guy that tries to sell a year early and not a year late. So I was like, all right, Nick Chubb time. He's not involved in the passing game. He gets replaced in the red zone a lot of times for Kareem Hunt. Maybe this is the year to sell him. So I sold him, and of course he goes and he's like having his best year ever. And I'm like just sitting there shaking my head, like, man, I could have waited one more year, but unfortunately I didn't. So I was with you with that one as well. Ryan, let's go to you. Give us one of your I was wrong players.
Unfortunately, I can't participate in this. I have
Get out of here.
Oh God, Cam Akers, man. I love Cam Akers. I thought he was going to bounce back. I thought the usage in the playoffs was like, yes, we know he was hurt, but you know what? We gave him carries during that run. I thought he was going to be fine this year. And man, has he made me look stupid. I don't know what it is, who he wronged, if he flirted with one of McVay's girlfriends. I don't know what it was. Like, dude, he fell off so hard, and it was a huge miss for me.
Yeah, I feel your pain. He's definitely on my list as well because I have him in that same home league, and he was one of the reasons why I felt okay trading away Nick Chubb. I'm like, well, I got Cam Akers on my bench. He can just easily step in and give me similar production. Yeah, that didn't pan out either, so he definitely hurt me this year. Another guy that hurt me, and I traded for him. It was really frustrating at the time. I thought he was going to have a breakout. It was the middle of the season, and I was debating between A.J. Dillon, who's my miss, and Ramondre Stevenson, who hadn't quite broken out yet. I chose A.J. Dillon thinking like, okay, he's going to, take over this backfield. And I actually wrote him up in the offseason and, went on and on about how he had more carries than Aaron Jones last year and how this offense is going to be a little bit more run heavy this year. And he could be the red zone guy. And man, was I wrong. Because, I think he's had one good week. I think it was week 1. And since then, he's done absolutely nothing for me. And I'm sitting there watching Ramondre Stevenson now break out and just have all these big games. And I'm like, I could have had Ramondre Stevenson, but I chose A.J. Dillon instead. And it hurts me. It hurts me. I'm going to do one more, Ryan, and then you can do one more, and then we'll get to our next segment. The other guy I have on my list, and maybe it changes now that Justin Fields starting to come along a little bit, but Darnell Mooney. I was buying Darnell Mooney in a lot of my leagues. I thought, his efficiency numbers were there, his route running ability. I wrote him up as well in the offseason about how he had separation, and if the quarterbacks had just gotten the ball, he could have had so many big games. And unfortunately, so far, he's had a couple good games here and there. He's a big play threat, but I thought the volume would be there along with the big plays, and he's not getting the volume yet. So with Justin Fields coming around, maybe he ends the season strong, but as of right now, I was definitely wrong on Darnell Mooney. All right, Ryan, give us one more.
Cortland Sutton. I feel like it's low-hanging fruit, but I had him projected really high. Like, he was flirting with my top 12, and I just did not expect Russ to fall off the way he did, just not be able to get him the ball. I thought it was going to go much, much different from him, and I feel like that was a pretty big mistake on that, but I feel like that's one I'm not that alone on. Which makes me feel a
it's
little
weird
better.
too because in the early part of the season, he was a big DFS play because he was getting like 35% of the targets. And we're like, that's great, keep throwing him the ball. But then all of a sudden, like Russ forgot he existed. It's like, what happened? I can't explain that one. I don't know what's going on with that. But yeah, you're right. Courtland Sutton has definitely disappeared for sure.
Jeff, I thought for sure you were going to say Trey Lance. Did the injury just scare you off?
Well, the injury was tough because he didn't get a chance to really do a whole lot of anything. I was on Trey Lance. I actually did an article on 3 undrafted quarterbacks, who you want to buy. 2 of them, I think it panned out pretty well. I had Tua as one of my not undrafted, I guess outside the top 12 is what it was. So I had Tua as one of my picks. I had Justin Fields as one of my picks. And then I also picked Trey Lance. And unfortunately, that one didn't work out because of injury. I think he would have been okay, though, had he been able to stay healthy. All right, let's get to some listener questions.
Go ahead. Ask me anything.
All right, we'll just alternate here, and we'll go with Joseph Navarro wants to know, would you trade Jonathan Taylor for Robinson and I do know because I asked him, this is a redraft PPR league.
Yeah, and I think actually what you have in here is Jonathan Taylor and Brian Robinson for Dalvin Cook.
Oh, you're right. I said that back. You're right.
Yeah, and when I was looking at it, I was like, this has to be a redraft question. So, because if it was Dynasty, it'd be a very, very big no thank you. This is an interesting question. It all revolves around what happens at the Colts, right? If Taylor comes back and the Colts are using him, you want the Jonathan Taylor side. If he's not back, and basically they sit him for the rest of the year, then in redraft it's basically trading Brian Robinson for Dalvin Cook. Yeah, of course you want the Dalvin Cook side.
Right.
So, I guess it's a really hard question to answer if you don't know what's going to happen with Jonathan Taylor. My inkling is to stay with the Jonathan Taylor side because, it looks like he might be coming back, and if he's playing, I want Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah. I was just going to ask you. I'm going to add a little bit of background to this question. His trade deadline is this week, so this is the last opportunity he has to do this. And so he has to make the decision here, and he is, I believe, he's won 3 games, so he has to make a decision because otherwise he's not going to make the playoffs. So is Dalvin Cook, is that enough to push you to Dalvin Cook at that point?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. You said he's only won 3 games.
Yeah, so is that 3 and 6? Is that what we're at week 9?
Yeah,
he still has a chance to make the playoffs if he
Joe,
runs the table.
I appreciate you putting the effort, buddy. I think Dalvin gives you instant satisfaction, and he can help you get some wins quickly. But it's probably a safer move.
Yeah,
but I'd rather do that if I had a talented team, and I just needed someone safe to put in it. I'd be more inclined to do it. But it's hard at that spot in the season.
Yeah, agreed. All right, Ryan, this one's for you. Ray Oblender wants to know, would I be crazy to trade away David Montgomery, Rondell Moore, and Courtland Sutton for Amon-Ra St. Brown? So basically, David Montgomery's been sort of phased out. Rondell Moore has got some value. Courtland Sutton we just talked about. And then you got Amon-Ra St. Brown. You're getting him. What do you think?
Did we know if this is redraft or Dynasty?
It's redraft.
Okay. Honestly, I don't care either way. It's Amon-Ra St. Brown. I want the highest value player. And at this point, the rest of these guys are replaceable. Like, David Montgomery, you don't want to start him at all if your team's good enough. Same with Rondell Moore and Sutton at this point. You have to start him because of his name value, and it makes it hard to bench him. But just solve that problem. Get Amon-Ra. You can start him, and he'll get volume. And I just want the best player in the deal because everything else is replaceable. Yeah,
I think I'm with you. I think I'm going with Amon-Ra St. Brown there as well. We got time for a couple more here. Jay, let's do B Jizzle 312. Full PPR He needs to start two of these guys: Devonta Smith, DJ Moore, Deontay Johnson, and Curtis Samuel. So start two of those receivers.
Yeah, so the projected points here are Devonta 9.8, DJ Moore 11.1, Deontay 10, and Curtis Samuels 8.1. PFF has them ranked very similarly to the projected points here. And I don't see any reason why to go away from what we're kind of thinking here. So I'd go DJ Moore and Deontay Johnson as my two starts out of that group.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think you get the volume there. Obviously last week was a little tough for DJ Moore, but I think in general he'll get more volume. Devonta Smith, he has the potential to put up those monster ceiling games, but then he has the potential to not even show up at all. So that one's tough. Curtis Samuel's nice, but yeah, I think I'm with you. I think it's Moore and Deontay Johnson for me as well. Let's do one more, Ryan. This is a dynasty question here. Real Fantasy TL wants to know Travis Etienne or Javonte in a 24 first. He's currently one game out of the final playoff spot, so Etienne probably helps him out there.
I'm going Etienne. I know we all love Javonte Williams before the season, and they're going to hate him and love him again. And every year's firsts are good, but you know what, man? We're looking 2 years out for me, and I know I value probably draft picks less than most people, even though I love the draft. But like, if you're in the running to win it, Etienne is an ascending talent, and I don't think we're near the peak of his fantasy value yet. I think even if you got him now and then trade him in the offseason, you'll recoup more than you traded away to get him.
Yeah,
so I think it's a win-win for him.
Good stuff. Gator wants to know what your shirt is, Ryan.
Oh, it's a DLF shirt I got from the Expo like 2 years ago.
Oh, nice. He had one more question too. I'll just ask this to the both of you. I'll go to you first, Jay. Does the weather worry anyone for tomorrow night's game? Any worry there for tomorrow night, Jay?
Oh man, I actually don't even. Is there huge weather going through? I actually don't know. Sorry.
It's supposed to be a hurricane hitting.
Oh yeah, they said like 30. They said like 30 mile per hour winds.
Yeah.
Oh man. Chicago, Ohio State last weekend played up at Northwestern, and there were huge winds on that game, and it definitely affected the passing game for both teams.
Yeah.
So like I guess you got to do kind of like be aware of those types of situations, but I'm always of the mentality that you start your studs. So if you got studs in that game, you still start them with a little bit of like hesitance if you're involved in the passing game kind of thing.
Are there even studs in this game? I mean, Donta Foreman versus Cordell Patterson, who I love, but like they'll get work anyways.
Yeah. DJ Moore. We just talked about him.
Zero. I love DJ Moore. No, I won't talk bad about him because I love him. But no, I just the running backs I'm cool with. Everybody else I probably don't want to play.
Yeah, I think I'm more worried about just the teams in general than I am about the weather in this one. They both like to run the ball, so maybe they just run the ball the entire game. And
I mean, that's what makes sense.
Yep. All right, let's get to our last segment of the night.
Get ready for GoingFor2.com's Forgotten Fantasy Player of the Week.
All right, Jay, you kind of teased your guy a little bit before during the pre-show here, so go ahead and give us your Forgotten Fantasy Player.
Yeah, so I hope this is a little surprising. I'm gonna go with David Boston.
Ooh,
that's a great one.
A great one. It is.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, so he's out of Ohio State. He was the 8th overall selection in 1999, and he was a big dude. He was 6'1", 215 pounds. He was exactly what you were looking for a prototype wide receiver in today's time. And he's super athletic too. I don't know if you guys have heard of like the RAS score or whatnot, but I went through and looked at his RAS score, which is a relative athletic score. At MathBomb does those, and it's a 9.88 out of 10.
Wow.
That's based on his size and testing from his combine numbers. My goodness, if this guy came out today in age, I'd be all over it. So in 2001, he had a huge year. He had 98 receptions, 1,598 yards, and 8 touchdowns. In 2002, he didn't have a great season. And then in 2003, he signed a 7-year, $47 million contract with the Chargers, where he then caught 70 passes for 880 yards and 7 touchdowns. But then he was traded to the Dolphins for a 6th-round pick because he had moody personality and bad practice habits. Then he tested positive for steroids, and he hurt his knee, and then he really never amounted to anything after that. But the reason I bring him up is when I started getting into football and OSU football in particular, that was around 1998, and he was the guy for OSU that year. He had 85 receptions, 1,435 yards, and 13 TDs that year at Ohio State. But the thing that stood out to me was like in all the big games, he was crushing it, right? So in the 1997 Rose Bowl against the Arizona State Sun Devils, he was playing against Jake the Snake Plummer. And with 19 seconds left to go, he scores the winning touchdown from Joe Germain. And then the next year in the 1998 Michigan game, he's playing the Wolverines. He had 10 receptions, 231 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
Wow.
And, this is the start of my Ohio State fandom. So I just remember going crazy as a young kid watching the game and starting to get into Ohio State sports and Ohio State athletics. And he just went off. So, he had that one amazing season in fantasy, was a big part of Ohio State's offense for 3 years, high draft pick. If he was coming out in today's day and age, he'd be like the prototype wide receiver, exactly what you're looking for. So that was my forgotten fantasy player.
Yeah, I remember his arms. Like, they were just gigantic. Like, he was just, he was huge. Like, he was definitely the guy that you look at and be like, oh my God.
Nobody was surprised about steroids.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like,
it took so long to test them. That's the part I'm surprised about. Yeah, definitely. That's a good one. I don't think we've had David Boston. We've been doing this for a long time.
No, we 100% have not. That's a good one.
That's a good one. Good stuff.
Good.
All right, that wraps the podcast up. Let's go around the room real quick. Give us your Twitter handle one more time, and if you want to plug anything, go ahead and do so. We'll go with you first, Jay.
So my Twitter handle is @_Jason Stein. I'm, like I said before, I'm a writer at Dynasty Nerds. Please go check out my content, and if you're a nerd herd, get into the Discord and talk to us over there. I write the Intelligent Fantasy Football Investor series for them. We just had in volume 11 come out this morning. Lots of buys and sells in there. I keep track of all of my hits and misses, so I'm very upfront with the accountability and everything that goes into that. And then I do a lot of analytical work on the Devy side. Devy's a passion of mine. I love playing C2C and Devy leagues. So I do analytical work for the Dynasty Nerds. We do a bunch of mock drafts from a Devy perspective, 5 rounds every month. You get to kind of see trends there. And then at the Devy Rail, we do a patron-only podcast that comes out every Wednesday. That's with Kevin Coleman at @DuBois_22, where we kind of do analytical breakdowns on some of the Devy players. So that's all my stuff.
Good stuff. Ryan, what you got going on? Same old thing?
Same old thing. Find me Twitter, Foss534. Same other things I say every other week.
Anything new going on in your podcast over there?
Not really. We're just talking about Dynasty. I'm excited for the off season for it. Like I'm ready to start talking rookies and jumping into film. I'm more excited about that than the regular season grind. Like during the season podcast, I feel like everything's the same, but I can't wait for the off season to start doing that stuff. That's when it gets fun. And start putting out content.
Agreed 100%. All right, guys, as always, you can follow me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. Of course, check out all of our shows in the Going for Two Live Podcast Network. We got a show every single night of the week. Some nights we got double headers. Friday night's podcast, the B League. Unfortunately, he will not have his show this week, but he will be back in a couple of weeks. He's actually in Australia right now visiting his hometown. So definitely check us out, guys. We got the Dynasty Saturday Night 5 on Saturdays. We got the IDP Cover Zero on Saturdays. We got the Sunday morning show, which I have been told that Zach is making his return this week to the show. So definitely check that out. And that's a wrap, guys. So for Ryan, for Jay, I'm Jeff. We will see y'all next week.